Welcome to today's North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. Got another great guest for you today, this time from the other side of the canal on the Tonawanda side. He knows a little bit and a lot of it about the TNT rivalry and the dynamics of football between North Tonawanda and Tonawanda. Please join me in welcoming Harry Lawler Jr. How are you today, my friend?
Doing well, Ed. Thanks. It's nice to meet you over the air, and I really appreciate getting a chance to talk about this subject.
You played at Tonawanda 1967 and 1968, 1969 graduate. Your father was a longtime basketball coach at Tonawanda, but he was also the athletic director and the assistant varsity football coach to Clint Small. How was it growing up being the son of Harry Lawler Sr., basketball coach, AD, and assistant football coach?
Oh, I had a tremendous childhood with my dad as all of those, wearing all of those hats that you mentioned. I got along great with my mother because I was never home. I was up in the fall. I rode my bicycle up to Veterans Park where the varsity football team practiced. All winter long, I was running around the gym, which was then the new senior high school up on Hines and Fletcher. And as I got a little older, I helped, as a ball boy and that kind of thing. But I just hung around and saw all the, at that time, to me, Tonawanda heroes playing, practicing, and so on. It was a great time for me.
I want to get right down to the nitty gritty and the TNT rivalry. You go way back. You go back to when they played in November and you had to shovel snow. You were telling me, and what do you recall about those rivalry days prior to you playing, and then while you were playing?
The first game that I remember was the 1960 game, and my mom took my sister and myself. I worked the sidelines. It was late afternoon for the 62 game, which was held in Tonawanda. The snow came, and Coach Small had all the guys up at the high school. I think they were seeing old films and having a team meal. And my dad had to wear two hats. Besides a coach, he was the AD, and they had to take care of the snow that was coming down on the field. So he grabbed hold of me, and we went down and helped a gentleman named Clyde Schulte, who was the buildings and grounds guy. And a couple of the custodial workers, and we were shoveling the at least the line markers so they could see that part when the game got going. But probably the biggest memory, though, out of before playing was in the 63 game. I rode the bus over to North Tonawanda, and Tonawanda had a top team then, and they beat North Tonawanda 25-6. On the bus ride home, there was a bit of a car parade, and as they got on Main Street in Tonawanda, things slowed down because of all the vehicles involved, and it just happened to have the bus slow down in front of Eddie's Tavern, and which is, I believe, Main and Morgan. And I'm sitting there taking it all in, all of the hooting and hollering, and a bunch of the bar patrons come out with handfuls of long neck beer bottles, and they start passing them in the bus window to the guys. And several of the Red Warriors had a beverage or two on the bus ride home. I'll just leave it at that. But the excitement and everything was, for a young elementary school kid, was just a tremendous experience.
What about during your playing days, 67 and 68, the TNT games?
As a player, I mean, we always had the rivalry against North Tonawanda. We played them as freshmen. We played them as JV, and of course, then the two varsity years that I played. My senior year, I was a captain or co-captain, and tough games. We didn't beat North Tonawanda either year. The second year, my senior year, we lost 6-0 at home, and we really had a bunch of our senior veterans out due to injury and issues like that. So we had kind of a junior lineup. And I thought we gave North Tonawanda a fairly tough game. We lost 6-0. I remember Ron Woods broke a run up the middle, probably 20, 30 yards or so. That was the only score. But it was big doings, and the whole week in preparation. When you're in the high school, I don't think we got too much done as far as the academics that week, but lots of excitement, lots of great memories.
Looking back right now and looking at what we have on the YouTube channel, you've gone back, and I'm sure you've gone back and seen the games that you played. What was your first reaction when you got to see yourself play once again?
Well, I looked at it two ways. I looked at it, number one, from a personal standpoint. I don't know anybody that doesn't like to see themselves, whether it's playing a sport or dancing or playing an instrument, whatever it might be. So I had a big thrill watching myself play. But then I also looked at it from, I coached football for 23 years at Newport, and I played my whole life. So I have a little bit of a knowledge of whether I was doing a good job or not and what I needed to improve on. So I watched it also from a coach's aspect, and I was okay. I did okay.
Did you find yourself remembering the plays or the defensive calls, and you were at a certain set, and we were in the XYZ at this point, and we called this play offensively?
I do. The one run that I remember that Woods scored on, they went on, they ran up the other side, and I got some penetration, but they just, I was on the wrong side, and he burst up through the hole. But there was a North Tonawanda, highly acclaimed North Tonawanda lineman, Stan Andrzejewski. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. And he and I went at it for most of the night. And there were some plays that I got the better of him, and there were probably the same number of plays where he got the better of me. But that was a tough physical battle. He was a good lineman. I remember in '67, I played against Ray Mano and Tony Krensky. I believe they might be in the hall. I'm not exactly sure, but at the time they were highly thought of linemen, and I had those kinds of battles with them.
If you can recall, what was your relationship with your father and Coach Clint Small?
In my view, it was good. It was a little unique having, because my father was the line coach. Coach Small had the backs and receivers, and Coach Leibinger, the defensive perimeter. So I played not only overall football for my dad. He was also my positional coach. So, there are things that he's making corrections and chewing on me a little bit in practice. Then you have to go home, and mom's got dinner there. And my dad was great about when he came home, whether it was basketball or football, he left whatever happened in the gym or on the field there. So I had to learn to do the same thing. I wouldn't come home and geez, why'd you yell at me, or something like that. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know anybody that didn't get along with Coach Small or Coach Leibinger. They were just tremendous role models and great men to be around. I actually went to work for Coach Leibinger for 7 years at Beaver Island State Park. He hired me on as a lifeguard. So it was a great summer job when you were home for college, and lots of admiration for all those men.
I want to go talk about the Niagara Frontier League. People have said probably that was the best league in all of New York State. What do you recall about the Niagara Frontier League and your thought? What are your thoughts about the Niagara Frontier League?
Well, from my perspective, I would agree with that statement. I don't know that obviously that's the case now. The powerhouses seem to be down in what used to be ECIC schools and that. But when I was growing up, from the very early 60s through actually just before I played, including when I played, because Kenmore West was coming on the scene then. The top teams in Western New York were either North Tonawanda, Tonawanda, the Falls, and then Ken West came on, and they were just the top teams. I remember my father telling me he talked to, I think it was Sparky Adams at East, and they had scrimmaged Riverside. Riverside had just finished with having the lineman that went to Syracuse, Joe Ehrman, and they were the cream of the Buffalo schools. And Kenmore East went up there and scrimmaged them and must have beat them 10 touchdowns to 1. Yeah, it was a controlled scrimmage, but nonetheless, as far as the quality went, Kenmore East was just heads and shoulders over the best school in Buffalo at the time. So I would agree with that statement. The NFL in that era was tops.
Did it make any difference that you were playing a big school or a small school, or did you treat them all basically the same?
I can remember Coach Small, and I, as a coach now, I understand why I did it, but he would continually preach that if we, for example, if we were playing trot, at the time, Niagara Wheatfield wasn't that strong, and they were considered the smaller schools. He would preach that they were just as dangerous as playing in North Tonawanda or the Falls or the Kenmores, and that we had to prepare, if not the same, even better to play those schools. You don't want to get knocked off by them, and we did a good job. I have kind of a bad memory from that situation. We were up at LaSalle Stadium and we played trot. It was in a nasty weather game, and trot had us at halftime. And the freshman coach that I played for, Al Kramer, he came in at halftime and he just ripped us. I don't think I've ever been on a team that's been ripped as bad. And he said, you guys cannot lose to trot. You need to start playing better, and a few other words and expletives. And we did. We went out in the second half and beat trot. But what the bad part about it, I really liked Coach Kramer. And the next morning, or either that or late that night, he ended up passing away from a heart attack. And I always thought, geez, if we had played better right from the beginning, he wouldn't have had to rip us like that. And who knows, maybe he'd still be alive. And that always stuck with me.
Wow. After high school, you went to Ithaca College, played 4 years of college football there. And then after that, you were hired by the Lewiston Porter School District, where you coached
Yes.
for many, many years. I believe you were athletic director as well, too, at one time.
No, I was elementary phys ed teacher. I was there 35 years, elementary phys ed teacher, and track coach and football coach, but not AD, no.
Okay. You had the opportunity to coach Moose Johnston, Daryl Johnston, who played at Lewiston Porter, then at Syracuse University, and then, of course, a great NFL career with the Dallas Cowboys. Did you know way back when that he was that kind of special player?
Ed, I've been asked that question numerous times. And, I'd like to say, oh, of course I did. I was so smart, I knew. But to be honest, no. What I did know, because of my playing background, is that we had a special athlete with skills that typically you would see in maybe 170-pound, 6-foot guy. We had those movement skills, hand-eye coordination skills, and just football sense skills in a kid that's got a 6'2", 250, this was in high school now, 215-pound frame. And that really was the the uniqueness of Daryl, to have that skill set, that speed, and that strength in the big frame. And that I knew was special. The rest was all Daryl, and certainly he made the most of everything.
What sticks out? And are there any particular plays or any particular games that stick out of Daryl Johnston's career at Newport?
Well, both from a team aspect, both years, his junior and senior year that he played for me, we went up to Rich Stadium. And in 82, we won. 83, we lost 13-7. Actually, both times we played Williamsville South. So to win up, actually, it was the only victory that Lewiston Porter's ever had as far as a sectional championship. We won the Class A sectional championship in 82. We were in the stadium 3 times. Those were big thrills. From an individual standpoint with Daryl, we were playing LaSalle, and LaSalle had a real good team that year. It was a muddy game, and we were actually, I think we were down 7-6. We were down by a point, and we had to punt. They had just stuffed us. Daryl was bad. He was our punter. He did everything. You know, it was the old adage of everything, drive the bus and cook the hot dogs. So he was back punting, and LaSalle broke through, blocked the punt, but it was off. He had gotten it off his foot, and they got a hand on it, and it tipped the ball up and back into Daryl's hands. He caught it from this position of being the punter and took off and ran about 40 yards in for the go-ahead touchdown. And he had a lot of amazing plays, but that one really sticks out. And we ended up beating LaSalle, which then got us it got us the Division III championship and got us into the Rich Stadium playoffs.
What was the reaction on the following week when you did film review?
Well, first of all, we made the corrections on the blocking, and special teams in particular was one of the things I took pride in, based on the training I had at Ithaca College. But we just couldn't get over it. And at the time, Chuck Sirianni was the coach at LaSalle, and we were friends off the coaching beat as well. And he just said, "Harry, only Daryl Johnston could have had that play happen." And I said, you know, it's certainly nothing we called. Yes, it was exceptional. It was quite a play.
You talk about relationships with various coaches, whether they're Niagara Frontier League coaches and or when they changed away from the Niagara Frontier League. Did you find yourself being friendly with a lot of different high school football coaches, or what was your relationship with them?
Ed, I did. I belong to the Western New York Football Coaches Association. So in the off season, there would be a guest coach would come in. Typically, it would be up in Williamsville, and then we'd go out for wings and a beverage afterwards. But they would put on an hour and a half lecture. Every once in a while, the Bills would send a coach down to do the lecture, and the subjects always varied, obviously having something to do with football. So I would meet coaches in the off season on a social basis, and you'd get to know them. And once we broke away from the NFL and we went to the federation with the divisional format, it seemed like the schools were continually changing in enrollment. So that would mean the opponents were continually changing as well. So we might play Medina for a little bit, and then all of a sudden now we're playing Maryvale, just because of the way the enrollments were coming around. And so I got to know quite a few coaches and socially off the field, and it was good. I don't see as many as I used to. I've been retired for 15 years, but I still see a few of the coaches around. When you mention coaches, I would also, if you don't mind, like to mention 2 North Tonawanda coaches that meant a lot to me. Excuse me. John Witowski was my elementary phys ed teacher and swim coach, and I looked up to him. He was he and my dad got along good, and I just always liked Coach Witowski. And the other one, my elementary school art teacher was Chuck Ramsey. And of course, at the time, he was the Tonawanda JV coach, but then went on to, as you well know, to Gibbons and then to NT. And he always made a point of, if I was in the crowd scouting or something, he always made a point to look me out and, give me a nod or say, "Hi, Harry, how you doing?" Those two gentlemen, I revere quite a bit.
A lot of today's coaching, there's not a lot of continuity, meaning coaches aren't hanging around or not part of the program for years and years like they used to be. What's your thoughts about something like that? What's happening with that trend?
Well, I agree 100% with you, Ed. Just if I could use Tonawanda as an example, my dad started in 44. I think Ed Leibinger a little bit after that, and Coach Small in 49. And that group, what I would say, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but Clint, Harry, and Ed were the Tonawanda coaching staff. When you went out for the football team, you didn't wonder who you're going to be playing for this year. When you talked about the Tonawanda football coaches, boom, those were the men. Now it seems like in school districts, they don't hire looking for a package person. I mean, there's lots of phys ed teachers out there, but why not hire a phys ed teacher that also has a strong background in football or for that matter, in volleyball or in baseball? A lot of the school administrators don't do that. And consequently, they don't have people that they can hire. They then have to hire from outside the district or outside of education. And those people seem to be, because of all of other life's pulls, they seem to have this, they last a year or two and then they move on. And I think if you look back at the programs, look how long Coach Vetter was there. And in the Kenmores, their coaching staff, I think that we're lacking in that now, and it hurts. The real solid programs, as I look all around Western New York, the real solid football programs have long-standing coaching staffs.
I'm going to ask you this question. Say if you're in an unknown place and you're having a conversation with somebody and you start talking about high school football, what would you tell them about Tonawanda football?
I would say that Tonawanda football has a tremendous history, and it had lots of community support. I can't speak to Tonawanda football presently because I try to make a game or two a year, but with all of the changes, Tonawanda is not the same city or the same school that I went to. So I would point mostly to the history and the tradition that Tonawanda had, at least up through the 2000s.
There's been talk over the years that maybe it's time to end the Tonawanda-North Tonawanda rivalry game. What's your thoughts on that? Should it continue or maybe go by the wayside?
My personal opinion is to continue it. I know that there's obviously a size and enrollment difference, but and North Tonawanda has had, the tremendous better side of things. But Tonawanda come up with a win was a couple of years ago, and North Tonawanda has been down by their standards a little bit. I think you can still play that game, especially with what's happening in schools and kids not going out for football. Even a school the size of North Tonawanda, they may not have that team or that roster of 50 anymore. I'm not exactly sure, but the games that I do go see, and I just pick random games in the fall to go watch, it seems like the average is somewhere between 22 to 28 to 30 kids on the sideline, whether it's a class AA school or maybe a C school.
What's your thoughts on today's high school football in Western New York?
Well, I hope the sport itself continues. The safety they've tried to bring along, with helmets and things like that, and training, whatnot. they're doing things to make it as safe as possible. And I think it's a great sport. It may sound kind of like maybe corny, but a lot of life's lessons that I learned by playing, I'm still carrying on. Or my grandkids were just here for the weekend, and you try to, push some of those lessons onto them as well, that you develop playing a sport like football with the physical rigors and requirements it takes, the teamwork that it takes. You got 11 guys out there you got to coordinate. I just think that it's a great American sport, and I hope it continues.
We've talked about several subjects right now. What haven't we talked about that you'd like to talk about?
I wanted to mention those two coaches, John Matowski and Chuck Ramsey, and I got that in. I mentioned the Tonawanda football staff. I really appreciate this opportunity, Ed, and I think from my perspective, I've covered the things that I wanted to mention.
With that, we'll wrap it up. Harry Lawler, it's been a pleasure talking to you today on the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. I wish you well. I wish you good health. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Ed. I appreciate it.